Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show. With your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino.
Hey, man, we got to thank the fans. You guys have been spreading that word.
That's right, man. We couldn't do it without you. We really couldn't.
And make sure that you tell your friends that you heard it here first.
That's right. And we're going to bring you another first. But first, we're going to take a pause for the cause. And then we'll be back with our guest of the week, a guitarist for a little band out of Australia called Rose Tattoo, and also his own solo band, the Dai Pritchard Band. So we're going to be back with Mr. Dai Pritchard.
This is Theodore Koth from Well-Known Strangers, and you're listening to Amps and Axes.
Okay, we are back as promised with our guest of the week from Down Under. Guitarist for Rose Tattoo and his own band, Dai Pritchard Band, Mr. Dai Pritchard. Dai, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, guys. How are you?
Doing great, man.
Okay, so I got a question.
Okay.
Right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate.
I got to ask.
Yeah, mate. What?
Because here's how it works. Okay, so you know how the urban legends are, right?
Now,
yeah.
Back in the day, you know, because they were from Australia, the news never got, you know, we didn't have the interweb like we do today. So
Right.
the news traveled, and it traveled through mouths, and by the time it got here, you know. And I got to ask you, did Angry Anderson, did he used to beat his head against the amps and bleed?
Yeah, Angry is a bit of, yeah. Well, he'd headbutt things, and he'd headbutt microphones. I mean, he'd do the whole windmill thing with a mic and then stop it with his forehead. You know.
So it was true.
There's great footage. There's a fantastic. There's a classic photo of the band of Angry. I think it was after Reading. Or something like that over in England, and he's just got the blood running down his forehead, you know. So,
wow.
See, I knew it was true because,
and that's a hard place to get the bleeding to stop.
Well,
and that's right.
And
yeah.
a little cut,
Yeah.
it looks like you're dying.
Right, it goes a long way.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah, it looks like you've been murdered. Yeah.
So how cool is that, huh?
Yeah, well, see, there you go.
Those were the days. I mean, I thought that was before my time, and I've been in Tats for 13 years. I came on board in 2004.
Okay,
cool.
Well, we're gonna go way back further than that because I'm going to do what I do with most of our guests, and we're going to jump in the Wayback Machine and find out where Mr. Dai Pritchard came from, where you were born and raised, and what got you into this wonderful world of music. So, give us a little history, man.
Oh man, well, I was born and raised in a little town called Upper Ferntree Gully. You know, it's not just Ferntree Gully, but Upper Ferntree Gully, because it was like further up the mountain. And it was in the southern part of Australia. I'm from Victoria, which is like the southern state, one of the southern states of Australia. And yeah, look, I was born, it was a pretty big family. Musically, my brother played a little bit of guitar. My father was Welsh, so he sang. Not a particularly musical family, but look, I got into it because I love music. I really love music, and I remember from an early age, it was like I was just so into it. And it was Ferntree Gully, as you can sort of gather, it was a rural town. It was out in the country, and my thing was I sort of stumbled into ice skating and ice hockey. I used to play ice hockey, and then. Around about sort of at 13, there was I started listening to stuff on the radio that I really loved, and I just gravitated toward guitar music, like really gravitated toward it. And of course, I mean, for us, Angus Young was a massive influence to everybody. AC/DC were. I mean, they used to play. AC/DC used to play where I used to, at the ice hockey rink where I used to train. Nice. It was a gig back in the day. I'm talking 1970. This would have been about 1974. Wow. And you'd go, you'd do like 4 hours of skating, and there'd be AC/DC playing in the corner, and some other local band, because that is one of the local bands.
Holy crap!
Yeah, that was bizarre. And when I look back, it was like it would have sounded, but I was like 13 or 14. But it would have sounded horrendous. I mean, it's a rock band, and they still had marshals and stuff, man, in a hockey rink. Right. You know, it was just, and it was like just ice and corrugated iron. You know? Yeah. And they had a rock band playing full tilt. It would have sounded horrendous, but to me, it was just like it was the sound of the gods. It was just like, I've got to get into this. And I remember going into town and going into the city with my parents, and there'd be a part of Melbourne that we'd go to. There was a whole bunch of pawn shops, and there'd be guitars just hanging up in the pawn shop, and they just looked fantastic to me. There was something about them, man. They looked dangerous. You know what I mean? They looked dangerous. They were all sparkling. Back there was like gills and things with Bigsby's on them, you know, and with the perloid, and they just looked like, and I thought, man, I want a piece of that, you know. I don't know what it is about these things. And then you see like Angus, and there's a great Australian guitar player, a guy called Kevin Borich, who was around at that time. And Kevin was like he's still playing, still working, like Kev's near 70 now, but wow. He was like our Jimi Hendrix. He was great. He was actually a Kiwi. He was a New Zealander, but he sort of made his fortune in Australia. And he was another guy that I sort of listened to. And I thought that was really cool.
Now, and, music-wise, and you were saying, of course, because they were there, AC/DC was a big influence. But like musically, what were you exposed to? And you know, I imagine it was probably substantially different than what we were exposed to in this country for a greater percentage, I would think. Yeah. Because we've heard other people say that we never had that music when I was growing up, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, American bands would spend a fortune going to Australia.
Yeah.
Back in those days.
It wasn't like that then. I mean, look, I remember when the Beatles hit. You know, like I'm 54, and I remember when the Beatles hit. I remember as a kid hearing "She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah" and "Help" on the radio, and I remember everyone talking about the Beatles. You know. I mean, and that was when I was a little boy, so it was like, oh yeah, so that sort of stuff. But funnily enough, that what really kicked it off is I played guitar and noodled around. Like I said, my brother played for a bit, so there was always a guitar. I've got two brothers, you know, and there was always a guitar kicking around the house. But it wasn't until I started hearing bands like, it was actually Alice Cooper.
Wow.
Yeah, man. I saw Alice Cooper. By the time I was playing around, and the first concert I went to was actually Ike and Tina Turner.
Wow.
I saw Tina Turner at Festival Hall in Melbourne. I was probably about 14 or 15. I was like, that was great. Then I saw Alice Cooper. And that was it, man. I sold my skates the next day. Wow. I sold my skates the next day, and the show was just so amazing, and it was that band. It was that original band, you know. And I saw the two guitar. I can't remember what the guys' names were, but it was that classic band. It was the Welcome to My Nightmare tour. And that was it. And I needed to do that, so I got my first guitar, and that was just from then on. It was fantastic. And that and Hendrix. I remember seeing Hendrix on television. He'd since passed, but I think he died in 70 or 71 or something like that. And but just that image of Jimi Hendrix and what that guy was doing again with that guitar. It was, I've got to do that. I've got to do that. And from that point on, I was just obsessed with it, you know.
Yeah, that original Alice Cooper band. I'm blanking on both of their names.
But that was such an amazing band. They were an amazing band, and it was just so cool. And I played before I was in Rose Tattoo. I played with a guy called. He actually went to the States for a while. An old Australian rocker, a guy called Billy Thorpe.
Oh man, Billy Thorpe.
No, I had read that. I was going to ask you about that because Children of the Sun, right?
Children of the Sun, had a hit in the States for Children. Well, I was his guitar player for a time, and we actually toured with Alice Cooper in about 2005, I think it was. We toured with Alice Cooper over here, and I think Ryan Roxy was one of the guitar players at the time, and he's a really cool guy, you know. And so I got on really well with him, and I told him the story. He said, "Oh man, you got to tell Alice." So I just got to meet Alice Cooper, and I told her, I said, man, I saw you when I was a kid, and I sold my skates, and because I was going to seriously get into ice hockey,
Oh,
and he said, oh, that's great, Dai. I'm really glad things worked out for you. So it was so cool. I met my hero, and I was like, oh my God.
I'm looking for the names, but we actually interviewed Ryan Roxy.
Yeah, Roxy was on. Yeah.
And Nita Strauss.
Yeah,
from the current.
Oh yeah,
lineup.
that band, his band is like an institution. It's an institution. There's some of the people who've gone through. I mean, so I've seen the guitar players. But I cannot remember who the guys were that I saw. I mean, he had Kane Roberts, and he had a whole bunch of different people that went through that band.
So the guys were during that album was Dick Wagner and Steve Hunter.
That'd be it.
They were
Dick Wagner. I remember Dick Wagner. Yeah,
they were the guitar players during that album, which was "Welcome to My Nightmare."
Yeah.
So they weren't even the original guys, because the original guys.
Right. Those were not the original.
I remember Neil Smith. I think it was Neil Smith, was it? Was the drummer?
Good God,
they were an amazing band.
Yeah.
He had albums all the way back in '69.
Oh yeah, man! I ended up getting them all. I've still got my vinyl copies of Killer and Schools Out, and
I think I'm pretty sure I started with Killer. Yeah.
Yeah, Killer. Yeah, it was awesome. Oh yeah, it's great.
Great songs, they're awesome songs.
Man, just that the sound of that SG.
Yeah.
And
those guys were Glenn Buxton.
Ah, that's it. Yep.
And Michael Bruce. And Rick Derringer actually played on a couple songs on Killer.
It was Buxton. Yeah, that's the one I was remembering.
Yeah.
It was his band, and his career has been such an institution.
Yeah.
Like so many people have been through it, right up to present day. And I mean, Ori Anthony was in the band, an Aussie girl, and it's pretty amazing. He's kind of like the John Mayer. Not John Mayer, John Mayall. He's like the John Mayall of like schlock rock. He takes everyone under his wing and sort of pushes them out there. It's great.
Well, there've been a bunch of people through Rose Tattoo, right?
Yeah. There's been quite
it's like that band is an institution now as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's been pretty good. It's been pretty cool. Like I say, I've been in the band. I joined the band in 2004. And I came on board. I was with Billy Thorpe right up until that time.
Wow.
I was for about 8 years. So Billy Thorpe and Rose Tattoo shared a drummer in Paul DeMarco. And that's kind of how I got the gigs. I knew him. And Pete Wells, who was the slide player, the original slide player in Tats, was not. He died of prostate cancer. And it was towards the end of his cancer. He was still working with the band, and he still did the local stuff, but it had gone into his hip. And he just couldn't do the overseas touring. So they'd get me to go to Europe because Pete just couldn't handle a flight. And Pete would do the local stuff. And then when he passed in 2005, I officially joined the band.
Oh, man.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, the Billy Thorpe thing is amazing because when Children of the Sun came out here in the States, there was nothing that sounded like that.
No.
I mean, technologically, that was recording that just had nobody could ever figure out how that drum stuff was done.
Yeah, he was working with loops, and he was a pretty amazing guy, Billy. He was pretty ahead of his time, and he was working with loops and a lot of that sort of stuff before anyone did. When a loop was a loop, like it was a tape loop that went around the studio, like over the TV and behind the couch, and they'd hang it up, that was like a loop.
That's too funny.
A physical loop.
Yeah,
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Wow,
so,
man.
Let's just back up a little bit. Trying to where we left off with the kind of growing up with the guitar thing. He saw Alice, and that's
what did it.
Yeah, so
that would have been 75-ish, 76.
Oh yeah, look, that was 77. I actually saw him.
Okay, okay.
I've been playing for a bit there, just in high school and stuff, and just noodling around with guitar. Like my mother actually bought because I kept on annoying my brother, and he's my older brother. So my mother went, for God's sake, I'll get you a guitar. So she bought me a guitar from my cousin who lived next door, and I'll never forget. It was like a classical. It was a Conqueror, and it cost her $5. That was my first guitar.
Here, kid, shut up.
Yeah, shut up, man. But I can't play. I don't care. So I remember my father walked in once when I was practicing, and he said, "What are you playing?" And I said, "I'm playing scales." And he said, "I've never heard of him." So they kind of encouraged me in a backhanded Australian kind of way. You know?
That's funny. So what was the first one that you could actually play decently?
Oh, look, I ended up getting I got, this is like after I saw Alice, so I bought like a steel string acoustic and just started learning songs. I was always drawn to like melodic songs. Like I said, I had an appreciation for music when I was a kid. I mean, I was glued to a transistor radio from when I was like 10, and I mean glued. I could recite the top 40 and all that sort of stuff. I just loved it. So I got this Takahura. I think it was just a Japanese copy of a Takamine, I think. And from there, I thought the acoustic was really cool, but I got my first electric. My first electric was a Les Paul copy. It was an Anson Les Paul copy, and I had like a Coronet. It was like a 10-watt solid-state amp.
Nice.
It was sort of like, it was a real dog, but it was a Les Paul, man. It was as far as I was concerned, it was a Les Paul.
Totally.
It was a bolt-on. Yeah, and I noodled around with that for a while, and then I bought and then I got a fuzz pedal, and then that was it. Now the heavens opened up.
We've heard that so many times.
I bet you guys have, man. Like I'll get to. I'm a massive fan of your podcast. I love.
Man.
I listen to it all the time.
You.
It's like,
that is so.
And
cool.
it's fantastic. Oh man, I love it.
So do you remember what the fuzz pedal was? I mean, 'cause that's going back to where there weren't 3,000 different overdrive pedals. You know?
No, that's right, man. I don't know. All I remember it was just. I'd love to be able to track it down. I know it didn't cost me much because I was a kid, you know.
Yeah.
But it was a huge black unit, and it didn't have knobs. It actually had faders. It had two faders on it, you know, and there was two sounds, and they were called light or dark. And one sounded that was bizarre, and because I just have the gain and the fuzz right up, you know, and light just sounded like kind of a white noise, and dark sounded like slightly less annoying white noise. That was pretty well the thing, you know. It was like, but to me, it was like it was Satan in a box, you know. As soon as I turned this thing on, that's it. It was all go.
You know, it is amazing that we have musicians today from that era, because every starter guitar was the most hideous thing that you could find. Amps you could not play with a drummer.
Yeah, right.
You know? No. It was ridiculous. This Coronet was just hilarious. You know? I'll never forget it.
It was either it had to be the absolute love of music to get past the 6-month period because of.
Right.
There was
if you're
nothing
going to
good.
attempt to play something with the strings a half an inch off the neck, you got to have one hell of a perseverant.
You were just committed
mentality, right? You were totally committed to it, and that makes for real players.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
Stick around, you know.
Oh yeah, you got to want that. You got to really want that stuff. I mean, I remember and that was the transition. I got this acoustic, and I was noodling around and learning songs and listening to Beatles songs and figuring out. I think the first song I actually really sort of figured out where everything locked in and I knew where the chords changed was like a Neil Diamond Solitary Man or something cheesy like that. You know, it was oh man, this is great. And then I kept on looking up. I had a poster of like Jimmy Page, and I'm sort of down in Country Corner, you know, like the first 3 frets. And I'm looking up at these pictures of Hendrix and these posters of Jimmy Page, and they're all up around the 12th fret, and I'm going, hang on, something's going on up there. There seems to be a lot of fun happening up there, and I'm always down here, you know. I was like, what's going on? So, and that's it. So electric sort of.
That's where the imagination that I think that gets lost with some of the newer players, because you can go on YouTube and you just see it immediately.
Right, everything is all there. 100% of everything is there, and it's immediate.
Yeah, back in the day, all you could do was look at that poster and go, "What in the hell was he playing?"
Yeah,
man, it was like Valhalla. It was like Valhalla. As far as I was concerned, Jimmy Page lived in a castle somewhere on top of a mountain.
Right.
Yeah, right. Like
that's what I thought.
Like this guy Hendrix, you were like, well, obviously, a spaceship came down. This guy got out.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
You know, and he started making these noises that nobody else produced.
Right.
You know, and then the world changed.
Yeah. It did.
What it was like,
really did.
You know, but it was so weird. I remember. And this is the thing. I mean, it's old man corner, but you know, you would stare at the album cover, and if it had a sleeve in the inside, forget it. You know, that was
That was hours worth of entertainment.
Yeah, and just imagining
Me too.
what they were doing, right? It's, no more of that, man.
Yeah, and trying to figure out how to play that stuff, because I mean, I was straight away as soon as I'd hear people, and Hendrix sort of did it, and after I saw Alice in that band, it was like guys soloing, you know, and they were just burning to me. They were just flying. I was like, how the hell did you do this? I've got to get that, and I was on it, man. I was on it like a fat kid on a cupcake. I was like, right, okay, now, man, I've got to figure out how to do this. And I've still got like my vinyl version. I'll keep this thing all my life. My vinyl version of Led Zeppelin 4. And you can see there's a groove on Stairway to Heaven. And I used to have to get coins and put them on the stylus to slow the thing down to work the solo out. And you had to really want to do that, you know, and which was great, you know.
Oh yeah, man, that's how it was done back in the day.
That's how it was done. Yeah. It was, and I think it's really cool because you developed an ear, you know. You developed an ear for that.
Yeah, there was no such thing as tab.
No, there was no tab. It was like that.
And when they first came out with the digital devices that you could slow the song down, but not the pitch.
You may as well just have it in water.
Yeah,
I think that was still fine because you really still had to figure it out on your own.
Yes,
it was a great piece of technology that allowed you just to slow things down a little bit.
And now it's even crazier.
Now it's just ridiculous.
Man, you got guitar pro stuff. I mean, when I teach, I'm a guitar teacher. I mean, and that stuff's great, man. If it was around, I mean, like you talk about, we might sit in Old Man Corner, which is a great place to be. I live there. You know?
I love it.
Yeah, but some of the stuff that's around now for the learning resources are amazing. If it was around, when I was a kid learning, we would have used it, you know.
Yeah.
But spare a thought for Robert Johnson. Imagine what he had to go through to play like Robert Johnson did.
Exactly.
Right. No blueprint for that.
No, not at all.
Maybe he did. Maybe the story's right. Maybe he did sell his soul
to the devil. Yeah.
I know. Wow. I felt like I did a couple times. You know, it was funny because prior to getting on here with you, we were having a conversation because we're looking at some of these newer metal kind of guys, and it's just mind-boggling that these kids are able to play the way they're able to play. Then I was telling Jeff, I said, you know, it's neat when you see a band like Airborne who is literally walking the footsteps of AC/DC.
Sure.
Oh yeah,
to preserve...
they're great. They're great kids.
Yeah.
Because we've done work with Airborne. We've toured with them a few times here and overseas, and we still call, especially Angry's, and we still call them the kids.
Yeah, and
the kids from Airborne, they're great.
And you know, it's kind of neat because even though they're not AC/DC, they're kind of carrying that thing that we feel is kind of getting lost in a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. Rock and roll is kind of taking this hit. And even bands that call themselves rock and roll, you kind of question it, but there's some still guys out there. We just interviewed Jared James Nichols, who is just...
Oh, yeah, don't get me started on that guy. I mean, I listened to that podcast. He's the new great white hope of rock and roll. Jared James Nichols, I love that cat. I love what he does. You know, as soon as I listened to your cast, I mean, I was all over it, and I just downloading his stuff, and it's like, he's fantastic.
And he doesn't use a pick.
His fingers, one pickup, straight into. And I relate to that. He's straight into whatever. You know? Right. It's like he's not a gear. It's like there's so many guys and they're all gear and no idea. I call it. You know,
I like that.
He's
all
just
gear and no
like
idea.
Les Paul.
I like it.
Yeah, Les Paul, or whatever.
Yeah, half a Les Paul.
That's how one pickup is gorgeous.
That's right.
Leslie West thing. It's great.
Totally.
We gotta put that in quotes in the description there.
Oh, yeah.
All gear and no idea.
All gear and no idea.
I love that. Yeah. That's good, man.
So let's again. I just want to go back a little bit. You start play. I mean, obviously you were playing with some friends, some mates before Thorpe. What was your first kind of outing with other people, and what kind of stuff were you doing?
Look, once I got my head around, I took some. It was really funny. I took some lessons and stuff. My mum would sort of go, "Oh, okay, listen, well, better get you some guitar lessons." So I remember she'd give me money to take guitar lessons, and I'd go to the local guitar shop, and there was a guy giving lessons there, and God bless him. I mean, it was like, okay, we're going to learn these Seekers songs, you know. I was like, I'm just not into that stuff, man. And it was, or It was like really 60s music. He was an older guy. Well, to me then, he was an older guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, man, I want to play Led Zeppelin. I want to play this sort of stuff, you know. So I ended up taking the money and buying cigarettes with it and just trying to and figuring out Led Zeppelin songs on my own and stuff. So then through that, I gravitated to other friends who listened to the same kind of music, like Sabbath and Kiss. I was starting to get into that sort of stuff. And so I ended up just jamming with a couple of guys that played as well. And I found that I could solo. It was really weird. I don't know how I could do it. Like, I think someone just showed me the basic, a first, fifth position pentatonic, and I was like, oh, that's kind of easy. And I just found that really easy. So I could just jump in and jam with people doing that. I just seemed to fall on the right notes. But when I did take these lessons, I mean, I got a little bit of chordal knowledge, which was great. The guy taught me how bar chords work. That was great. So I think that was my first jam band. It was a school thing. I think we were called the Arrows, and we did half of one gig once. I remember that, It was sort of, and then I came. At that point, I was living in far north Queensland. But then I came down to Sydney. I was living with my brother and just trying to find people to jam with and just going out and seeing bands. And from there, I joined. It was quite funny. I joined a band that didn't have a name with a bunch of guys. We ended up being like a punk band. And by now, I'd upgraded my gear, and I had a Vardis, a 30-watt, a valve amp by now. I had a 30-watt Vardis and an Ibanez Les Paul, I think, which were, and about that time, the first thing I did was put like DiMaggio super distortions in it, because that's what you did to everything.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, man.
It was like, Ace Frehley came along, everyone was using, like, it was the DiMaggio super distortion, so I had this gained up sort of thing happening, and from that, did some local gigs, and the band ended up being called The Vents. And I still have contacts with some of those guys, and I would have been like, by now I'm like 17. Then from there, because I always wrote songs. So I met up with some people, a lady called Stephanie Howe and her then husband, who was a drummer, and I formed an original band with them called The Straza. And we did quite a few gigs and ended up opening for quite a few people out here, like Jimmy Barnes and the Angels and bands. This is back in the late 70s, early it would have been early 80s, and that's where I sort of really cut my teeth. And by then I obviously, after the vents, I got my first I hadn't a quad, and it was like, oh, that was it. I was like, this is how it works, man. And I had a 50-watt Baez, which was an Australian amp. They're actually made in Newcastle. There was 50-watt Baez and a 4x12 cab full of E-tone speakers, which were an Australian speaker. And it was chipboard, and it weighed a ton. I remember that. Carting this thing around, a particle board quad box that weighed a ton. But I was a big guy, so I was like, yeah, that's okay. So I can get this thing around.
That's great, because you mentioned two amps that I had never heard of before either. No. Do you still have either one of them?
There was amp builders here back then.
Yeah. It must have been. It had to be. I mean,
it would cost a fortune to have
get
that
things
stuff
there. So you
there,
have local for whatever that means for the area. That people that are taking care of the need.
It was local stuff. I mean, I had this Bass. I mean, you could get Marshalls and the guitars and stuff. You could get pretty much anything you really wanted. I mean, I got my first. When I was in that band, the punk band, The Vents, I ended up sort of got this Baez thing, which was an Australian amp. But then I got my first Marshall. I got like a JMP head, and I think I still had the chipboard cab. But then I had my first Marshall, and from then on, I think I had a succession because I just loved them. That was the sound.
Now,
that was the sound.
Now, back in the day, what were they coming with power tube wise? Because I know, when they were shipping them here, they were changing out the power tubes, right?
For the U.S.
Yeah, because
Rose Morris put that change in because the EL34s would either not make the trip well, or the ones that were getting wouldn't last through the warranty.
We always had EL34s. I mean, I think because to me the American amps had the American Marshalls always had the 6L6s
6550s
over here because we run 240 volt.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right.
Which you could change anyway, but yeah, they're always mine. I think it had a set of Sylvanias in it, Sylvania EL34s. That's what they pretty well came at the first one, but it was just a straight head. It was a non-master volume head.
Nice.
Which was really cool. I mean, but I was a kid when I got there. I was 17, trying to play in clubs with it. So in the end, I mean, you could push a pedal into the front end of it, but the sound was just different. So I ended up getting it converted to a master volume. But I always remembered how it sounded, you know. And I didn't link the channels or anything. I just loved going into the top left because it's what Angus did, you know.
There you go.
Just going into the top left and just cranking it was such a sound. So what I do, I just turn the cab to the wall. Mm-hmm. You know, and it would deflect off the back wall. People would still hear the guitar, and if it was like mic'd up anyway. So I did that for quite a while. But then, I submitted in the end and just got a master volume head. And then I tried a 50 I had a 50-watt Marshall Artist head, which was, remember the Artist, a really funny head. They actually had reverb in them.
Yeah.
Which I never used, and I used one of those because it was 50, and it would break up a little earlier, but it was still damn loud, you know.
Yeah, not my favorite Marshall at all.
No.
no, I only had it for a little while. It was a little different than the Artist.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to get the Schaefer Vega True Diversity system to
be the whole Angus.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Do the Angus thing. You ever got the tower?
Right,
that
tower.
pedal is just like, it's all of a sudden it's become the holy grail.
My God, yeah, that thing is like, it's taken on a life of its own.
Oh yeah,
it has, man. It's sort of like so that's what you use all the time. It's sort of like, it's like the pick of destiny.
Absolutely,
it's hilarious. Well, I was even talking because luckily we did the Tats. We've just done the Australian leg of the Guns N' Roses tour, and I've met Richard Fortus a few times. He's great, you know, and. He's got one in his rig, and we were talking about and laughing about it, you know. So I said, "Have you got the pedal or the tower?" And he's got, "Oh, I've got the tower."
Of course he does.
Yeah.
Well, you know, what's funny is Joel from Airborne. Mm-hmm. He has one, right? And
of course they would.
And
I said, they're AC/DC train spotters. You know what I mean?
And I said to Phil, because I texted Phil and I said, "Hey, I'm here at the Airborne show," and he goes, "Do you see the box?" I'm like, "Yeah." You see the tower? I said, "Yeah, it's right there in front of me."
That's hilarious. So let me go to Thorpe now. How did you get involved with Thorpe, and was that already in existence and they needed a guitar player, or did you guys kind of put that together from the ground up, or did you come in later? How did that all happen?
I came in later. It was a funny story. I was with whatever before, trying to think back, who was with before Thorpe? Once I finished with the punk band, the Vents, I went from them. There was an Australian band called Masters Apprentices. I don't know if you guys got them. They went to England in the 60s. No. They had a massive hit with a song called Turn Up Your Radio. I don't know if that really went to America, but they were a big deal in Australia. And there was two brothers in the band, the Burgess brothers. And they were putting a band together called His Majesty. And they were looking, by now I'm about 19, and they were auditioning guitar players, and I got the gig with them.
Oh.
Yeah, which was really cool. And I was with them for about a couple of years, and then that's how I sort of got into, that sort of took me to a next level of player, because it's not so much you're playing. I mean, I just love to play, so I could always get the gig done. You know, I'd learn my stuff and I'd do the job. But it got you into that networking circle where you'd bump into other players. It's like the next level up. Mm-hmm. And as you know, a lot of it is about that.
Oh, for sure.
You know, a lot of it's about that. By now I'm about 19 or 20. And in this country, Australia is like unique because we've got a massive landmass. You know, the country is huge, mm-hmm. and there's like 25 million people in it. You know, so it's like you got to. Mate, we do distance, man, in Australia. So the touring thing in Australia is different. So the circle is quite small of working players, and if you can sort of prove that you can do the gig and you're not an asshole, you know, man, you'd sort of like word had spread, and people would know who you were. And it was through that, and then after His Majesty, I just started playing in a lot of covers bands, just like bar bands and that sort of stuff. And I was in a band called the Junkyard Dogs, which was a 3-piece. And we opened for Ian Moss, who's an Australian guitar player from Cold Chisel, who are a big band, who was the band that Jimmy Barnes fronted. He was like Jimmy. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Jimmy Barnes is like Australia's Bruce Springsteen. And they had Ian Moss's drummer was Paul DeMarco, who was Billy Thorpe's drummer and Rose Tattoo's drummer at the same time.
Wow.
So he's going, okay, cool. So word got out that Thorpe had come back to Australia because he was in LA for like 20 years. And he came back to Australia with his original band and did some gigs with his original band, which was the Aztecs. It was Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs. So he hooked up with those guys again, did a tour, and it was quite big because Thorpe had been gone for so many years. And then all those guys decided they'd had different careers, the original members of the Aztecs, and Thorpe went, I really want to put a band together. So he had a band, because he was a guitar player himself and a good guitar player. And he had two other local guys, a guy called Steve Edmonds, who's still a great friend of mine, and another guy called Randall Waller, who's an Australian guitar player. And we used to call it the guitar orchestra. So there was 3 guitars in the band. It was like a cacophony because everyone was really loud. There was all like Marshalls. It was all going on. And then one of the guitar players, Randall Waller, got the call. He got the gig with Shania Twain.
Wow.
Jeez. Yeah, in the States. Wow. He got the gig with Shania Twain. So he had to relocate to LA.
I wonder if Mutt Lang had anything to do with that.
And there was a hole in the band. And DeMarco, the drummer, said, well, listen, I saw this guy playing with a band that opened for Mossy, for Ian Moss, the band he was in. Let's have a crack with him. So I auditioned, and I got the gig, and I was with him for about 8 years.
Nice.
Actually, right, because Bill died in 2007. I was with him right up till he died, because for a while I crossed camps. I was actually in Thorpe's band, and the same as DeMarco. By then I'd been asked to join Rose Tattoo as well.
Wow.
So that was kind of the transition. And that was the length of time I was with Thorpe. And Thorpe was great, man. He taught me a lot. I learned a lot from Billy Thorpe.
Really? Guitar-wise or business-wise or song-wise? Or?
Right across the board. He was a consummate performer. He was a rocker. You know, he was a great performer. I just learned performance skill from the guy. Guitar-wise, yeah, I really learned about band dynamics, because he came from a school back in he was a pop star in the 60s, you know, in the early 60s, and then morphed out, as a lot of them do, like, morphed into a rocker. You know, he morphed through the 70s, and all of a sudden amps got really loud. And there was a famous festival here in Australia called the Sunbury Festival, and he headlined that in like 1974. And they were using like 400-watt Strauss amps. You know, they were the biggest thing you could get, and it was just, you know. And because he came from that school, and the technology wasn't really good back in those days, they were using column PAs.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And that's why you see these people don't understand. You'd see these backline, this massive backline. You see stuff like Deep Purple and Hendrix and Cream back in the day. They've got these masses of Marshalls, and that's because, well, there's a whole bunch of people. You want to hear the guitar, that's where it's coming from.
Right.
It's not in the PA. It's coming off the stage.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
You know, and the only thing that's really in the PA is the vocal. And the kit, really. Yeah, so those guys would learn band dynamic. You know, they'd really learn how to sort of like control their own dynamic. You know, you'd have to turn the guitar up because there was no boost pedals and stuff. If you want to solo, you turn it up and then you turn it back down again, and you have to work as a band. And Billy taught me that sort of stuff, which was great, because when I was in his band, he was using he had a rack with 2 Marshall heads in it, and yeah, we're both using Marshalls, and they were pretty loud. You know, so the band was loud, and he taught me that, which was great.
That's
I actually do miss him. Yeah.
You know, that, you know, for me, like, you get into a touring band, you know, that I think also falls under not being an asshole on stage, you know, because
that's right. Yeah.
You really have to respect everybody else.
So I'm on his wiki page, right? And I see that he was born in 1946, but his years active as a musician was from 1956
years old. Wow.
Until 2007.
Wow. That's right, too. Right. He was a child star. He was a child star. As he was like a little boy, he was a cute-looking little kid, and he was famous for singing like "How Much Is That Doggy in the Window" on television. And then he just morphed into a pop star who morphed into a rock star. Yeah.
Wow.
And
sing, amazing singer, amazing rock singer. Like, he was really cool, like really, really, really loud. He was like, and the way he presented himself, because he wasn't big in stature, he was a little man. But he was like, I mean, the Billy Thorpe band, the best, I heard it described once, it was like Motorhead fronted by James Cagney. And that was really what we were like, you know.
Oh my God, that's freaking hilarious!
Yeah,
what
it was
a
really
visual
cool.
that
He was
is.
like very Cagney-esque. You know? He was like a little bantam rooster. You know?
That's hilarious. Wow,
that's an amazing. I mean,
career.
Oh,
wow.
What's in there too under his page is just
that's
unreal.
Pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and because here in the States we knew him for Children of the
Children
Sun.
of the Sun. That's it. No one ever knew it. His biggest hit here was a song called "Most People I Know Think I'm Crazy," and it's still like an Australian anthem. It's a big song. It's like, it's huge Australian song. It's almost like our Freebird.
That is so cool.
Now I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah,
most people I know think I'm crazy.
Yeah,
that's great.
It was so funny. It was really cool for the poor guy towards the end of his career. I shouldn't say poor guy. He had a great career, and outside of Australia, no one knew about that song until Guess Jeans. Guess the label Guess Jeans. They ran this campaign in America, and they'd have all these, and it was a massive thing in New York, and they'd have all these massive artists of the day wearing Guess jeans, and there'd be on a billboard, and they'd quoting my favourite song, and it'd be like Beyonce wearing a pair of Guess jeans and saying, my favourite song is blah, 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 and then they do a version of it. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes Keith Urban, right, who is an Australian, and he's wearing a pair of Guess jeans and this massive billboard in New York somewhere and going, well, my favourite song is Billy Thorpe's Most People I Know Think I'm Crazy. And he covered it.
That's
and all
awesome.
of a sudden it was like, Bill was like, oh, hooray, finally, my greatest song. And Keith Urban covered it, which was really good. So a lot of people got to know it from that.
Well, there's probably a little bit of mailbox money that goes along with that. So
yeah, it's it. Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool. What was I guys? When did you start playing slide? And was that something that you wanted to go towards? And did you have influences, or was it something that came out of necessity?
Look, it was something I was just fascinated. I was just a lot of people think I'm just a slide player. I actually just, for the most part, in Rose Tattoo, that's pretty well my role. I just play everything. I have a custom-made flying V that just lives in open E, and it's all open E slide. And that's sort of like, a lot of people know me just as a slide player. I sort of, first time I heard slide guitar and went, oh, hang on a second, this is different. This is really cool. It was Johnny Winter. And I thought, what's that? What's going on? I remember that as a kid. Who is this guy? What's that on his finger? What's he doing? And then I hear the sound of it. It was like, there's something about that. I really loved it. So I just picked it up and started noodling around with it. And there was another guitar player I mentioned earlier, a great Australian player, Kevin Borich. And now he was a great slide player, and he'd play a lot of slide. And I'd see Kevin, and I'd go, oh, that's slide, okay. And I'd try to get my head around how they played it. So I just got a slide. And I just it took me years. I was trying to work out Kevin Borich tunes, and this is how caveman my approach was. It took me about 3 years till I realised that they actually tuned it to an open chord. So I was trying to learn everything in standard tuning and wondering why I couldn't quite get it. But it was really good because I got some amazing slide chops out of it, trying to work out open tuning stuff in a standard tuning. So I think all Kevin's stuff was in open A, But that's so I sort of started playing with slide quite early, and I really just like the sound of it.
That's really funny. That's Johnny Winter as a slide influence.
Johnny Winter, he was the first guy. I went, oh yeah, and then Allman Brothers, so there's that sound again. It's like slide has such a footprint. It's got such it's not just all of a sudden it's a technique. It's a complete musical footprint to me. Anything that's got slide in it, all of a sudden you're on a river fishing. You know what I mean? It takes you to a certain place when you hear slide music. You don't hear slide in jazz. You know what I mean?
No.
It's like, and it was that music as well that I sort of went, oh yeah, I like that kind of music too. It takes you there, that blues rock thing. As soon as I heard Johnny Winter, it was like, oh yeah, I love that.
That's pretty cool. So you said that's your basic role in Rose Tattoo.
Pretty well, yeah. That's slide. Every now and then, I mean, the Tats have got quite a few albums, and there was a lot of players that went through. Pete Wells, actually, who was the founding member, who was just a slide player. Pete couldn't play guitar in standard tuning. He was Peter Wells was originally a bass player in an Australian band here called Buffalo, and he was the bass player. And he went, "Oh, I want to play guitar. I want to form my own." He had a vision. He said, "I want to form my own blues rock band that's got a lot of attitude. I want to play guitar." So basically, he said, "The easiest way, I'm just going to tune it to open E and just play slide." And he couldn't play standard guitar. He just played open E slide.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had to sort of fit into that, fill those shoes. So by that time, I've been playing slide for quite a while. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I do. There are some songs, we've toured with songs off other albums that weren't so slide orientated. So I just I have a Les Paul in standard tuning. We'd have two guitars in standard tuning. And some of the other stuff, the slide was in open G. So the other guitar player, who was a member of the band, Robin Riley, for quite a while, he'd play the open G slide. And I played just standard.
Wow.
Wow.
Now, were you ever influenced by Rod Price from Foghat?
Oh, yeah, I love Foghat. I love Foghat. I play in other bands here, and we still do Foghat's version of "I Just Want to Make Love to You." It's just like that's the dirtiest groove. I love it. I love that.
I don't know if Rod ever touched a fingerboard.
Yeah,
back in those days. I mean, you know how it was Lonesome Dave, right? Well, it was Rod the Bottle. You know, because it was just, if you listen to that old Foghat stuff,
right,
it is just in there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And some of it, he had a very unique approach. If you ever listen to some of that stuff really intently, where you hear the Allman Brothers, or if you hear a Derek Trucks, right away. You go, oh yeah, there it is, right? But Rod had this thing, man. That guy he just snuck that thing in there. And you were like, what is he doing there? Is that slide? And then you would hear it, Yeah. But some of that older stuff, I mean, because I have Foghat Live, and, I wore the groove out of that album. And there's only 6 songs on the whole album. The shortest live album in history.
Wow. Wow.
But, and that, I would think, that would be he was a huge influence on a lot of people, but unknowingly.
Right.
Yeah. And I think most of the slide players, I mean, that we all sort of gravitated towards, like, obviously all the older Delta guys, you sort of listen to that, and they stumbled upon the open tuning thing. But there's guys now who have just, like, Derek Trucks has just taken it to, and Sonny Landreth. I mean, those guys have just taken it to another level. They really have. They're quite amazing. And there's another. What's the name of the band? There's 2 Canadian brothers, Landreth, the brothers Landreth, and it's what's his name? The young guy. They're great. He's a fantastic singer, and he's a beautiful slide player. So I think it's something Landreth, young guy, but he's great. The brothers Landreth, they're fantastic band. It's like a country sort of band. Country bluesy band, but he's the same. He's like a Derek Trucks. And Derek Trucks, the way Derek Trucks plays, and it's that Eastern stuff, those quarter tones that he gets. It's quite amazing.
Yeah.
And there's other guys. George Harrison was a very underrated slide player. I mean, you could smell George Harrison's slide playing a mile away. You knew he just had, again, a footprint. He had a thing about his slide playing. It was so identifiable. He's one of those guitar players.
So that band has Joey Landreth, David Landreth.
Joey Landreth, that's him. Joey Landreth.
Okay. Yeah. So
he's really cool. Check him out. He's a beautiful slide player.
Winnipeg, Canada. Alternative country folk rock band.
Yeah, they're really cool.
It's ringing a bell. And there was a Brothers something that I had heard today that was either nominated for a Grammy or they won a Grammy or for best.
Yeah, I think it's probably there. It's just the brothers Landreth.
Yeah,
is the name of the band. And it's really bizarre. They're not related to Sonny Landreth, but their father was a musician in Canada of note. I don't know what his name, but it was something Landreth. And Sonny Landreth played in their father's band. There was no relation, really. It was quite bizarre.
Well,
That's
it's real
funny.
easy to find out where Sonny came from because he was on the same spaceship as Hendrix.
Yeah, I know. I mean, how good is the guy?
Oh, my God.
I mean, and,
he's
you know,
just
he'll play notes with his fingers behind the slide,
yes. And I
it's
saw
like,
him.
Oh yeah, no, that's a really cool thing to do. I mean, I try to do that with what I do with Rose Tattoo. It's fairly sort of, it's pretty caveman, and that's the beauty of it. It's very simple. I have my own technique that I use, but a lot of it I have to fill Pete Wells' shoes, and he was a very basic, good slide player, but he had a pretty meat and potatoes approach to it. But yeah, that playing behind the slide thing is great.
wow. I tried that once, and you know, at that point, you know, probably figured that I was off the spaceship with Hendrix. You know.
Well, I saw him at Crossroads. And I'd never seen him.
Oh, well,
live,
okay.
Right? And I got to see up close because, you know, the Jumbotron thing, right? And I'm watching him, and I'm going, I don't even understand what he's doing. Like, the noises that were coming out, I'm like, none of that is corresponding with what his hands are doing right now. And I'm seeing, you know, he was doing stuff behind it.
It's like he's got a third hand, almost, you know?
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah,
and a lot of it, because you sort of govern, depending on the tuning that you use, you are a bit of a slave to the major third. I mean, if you're an open E tuning, which a lot of guys, I mean, Derek Trucks spends, I think most of his stuff's in open E. You're pretty well governed by, you've got this major third right in the middle, like your G string is the major third. So the only way you can get around, if you want to play something like a minor chord, you have to depress under the slide. You have to depress that G string down a semitone to get yourself a minor chord
go behind
in a lot
it,
of places. So
well, there's the
answer. It's a good thing to get your head around.
Interesting.
There you go.
Now, you know, I'll have to try the whole open E thing. I was probably in either standard or G or something. Yeah. So
a lot of guys do just open G tuning. You know.
Yeah. So
wow.
Do you do you do a lot of slide or some slide in your own band?
Yeah. I mean, I recorded an album a while ago, and there's a song called Big Man Moving, and it's really funny because my favourite open tuning is actually G.
Okay.
I do like open G because I can understand why a lot of people just gravitated towards it because it's a really chunky sort of tuning. Sometimes it's sort of you struggle with what to do with the low D string. But you can still play a lot of rock stuff. Obviously, if Keith gravitated to it. There's so many Black Crowes tunes that are open G. It's a great tuning because the major third is on the B string, so you can sort of avoid that. You can still get like really punchy 5 chords from the A string, to the G string. You know, it's just you've got like a really punchy 5 chord from the A string. That's the root note, so you can play a lot of really chunky sort of rock riffs with it.
Right, and you know, Keith figured out how to deal with that. What you do with a low E string?
He certainly did.
Just take it off.
We won't be needing this then, will we?
Exactly.
Oh, right.
Oh, man. Well, Dai, anything we haven't covered? Any touring you want to talk about? Any releases, whether it's Tattoo or whether it's your own band or anything we missed?
Yeah, look, we've got a couple of releases. I have an album called Killing Time, which I recorded a couple of years ago. So when I'm out and about with just Dai Pritchard band, which I do as a 3-piece, occasionally I have a Hammond player. Nice. That's available on my website, which is www.daipritchard.com. We're touring Tattoo. We're actually, that's why I was up late this morning. We're in rehearsals at the moment for Rose Tattoo have just released a live album called Live in Brunswick, which is from a famous gig that we did back in 82. The band did in 1982. So we're touring that in Australia at the moment. It's just calling it the Live in Brunswick tour, and that's available now. I think it's only available in Australia. It's obviously on iTunes. You get it on iTunes, but physical copy is. I mean, I've had some people contact me through social media saying we've got a lot of German fans because we're pretty big in Germany, and they can't get a physical copy. I mean, my album you can get if you want a physical copy, just get it via my website, which is at daipritchard.com. And the same thing with the Tats album, just through the Rose Tattoo website. Will probably be, there was noises about Tats coming back to Europe we haven't been back to Europe since 2008. So hopefully on the back of this live release, we want to record another album. I was talking with Angry about that last night. So we will be back in Europe next year to probably do Wacken again, which is the festival we love doing over there. We'd love to get to the States. We would love to get to the States. We haven't been, Tattoo haven't been to America since, it'll be over 20 years. I think we toured over there with Aerosmith and ZZ Top years and years ago, but it's over 20 years since we've been there. We'd love to come over.
We'd love to have you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And here's the thing. We're going to, on the show, you're going to see, if you go to ampsandaccesscast.com, you're going to see the link there for Dai stuff and tattoo stuff, and it will live in
perpetuity.
That's right, even when it goes out to the archive. So definitely click out there, find his stuff, and if you want a physical copy, just get in contact.
Right, hit the website, hit their websites.
You'll get it.
If
I'll sign it and I'll send it to you.
There you go.
Wow. You get it signed.
Wow.
Can't beat that. How about that?
Yeah, well, Dai, thank you so much for waking up and taking the time, man. I know.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, there's one other thing. There's like, I actually do a podcast myself.
Oh, wow.
With some guys from local guitar store. It's called MSWB Talk & Shop. And that's just all things guitar and with Ben Travis, who's a mate of mine who has the store, and an amazing amp builder and luthier, a guy called Mark Baker, who actually built I'm using a whole bunch of different things at the moment, but he built this amazing amp that I've been using at the moment. It's like started its life as a JTM 45, and it's kind of morphed into a 50-watt Plexi, and so
awesome.
When we talk all things gear.
Well, I tell you what.
Very nice.
We'll have to do some cross-pollinating, but we'll definitely have that on the link, too.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. MSW, which stands for Music Solutions Warners Bay, which is the shop. Yeah, MSWB Talk & Shop.
Now, have you had a chance to talk to our buddy Matt Wakeling out there with Guitar Speak Podcast?
No, not as yet. I noticed that on one of your podcasts.
Yeah, man, he's in your backyard. You ought to get. I tell you what, I'll make that happen.
Yeah, Troubles, we got a big backyard, man. We got a big backyard.
Well, I make that happen, so that way you can get on his show, man. He's an awesome dude.
Well, if you could talk to the States, you can talk to your backyard.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mick. Thanks, Jeff. Good on you, man. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Dai, thank you so very much. Like I said, I know it's early there, and you had a late rehearsal night, so. Go brew up another pot of coffee. Much continued success to you and to Tattoo. And, man, I hope we get to see you in the States someday.
Yeah.
I'd love to. We would love to come over, man, yeah.
Cool.
I want to headbutt Angry.
There you go.
Cool. Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, take care, Dai. Have a great day. And there you have the story.
How cool is that, huh?
Very.
And you know what? He is a fan of the show, man. He wrote into us and asked, about coming on, and I was like, holy crap, Rose Tattoo. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the whole Billy Thorpe connection, that was so cool.
Oh, man, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
What a great guy.
Yeah, they're I'm glad the Tats are still together. And they still have Angry, because man, I swear to God, I don't know why AC/DC didn't snatch him up.
Yeah,
way back, because
they do covers,
but he would have been such a great replacement for Bon Scott.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah,
so they're lucky that whole band is still intact.
I'm telling you what, man, that it's one of those like best kept secrets almost, and it's real rock and roll. I mean, if you guys aren't familiar, just check it out. Go on YouTube; you can see a ton of stuff out there, or see and hear.
That was a really fun interview, except when he. Just solitary, man. But I'll let him go. I love Neil Diamond, Solitary Man. I do. The Rads do a great cover of that.
Neil loves it too.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
So until next time, my friend.
That's right, because we'll be in some other part of this rock.
I love this world.
Totally.
I'm Mick Marcelino.
I'm Jeff Bober.
And we're always saying onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @AmpsandAxes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaccesscast.com. Thanks for listening.